wanted to start with a couple of little announcements. I mean, first of all, I wanted to say I'm sorry about the links expiring. We're using a new system, and I didn't realize that there was a time limit on it, but we've got that switched to 60 days, and we'll actually be moving those materials to a different location, too, so you have access to them later than that. And quickly, I wanted to remind you that next time we meet is going to be on site in Missouri on June 5th, 7th. So, and I think people have figured out which one they're coming to. So, and do remember that from session 2, webinar 2, we did have an assignment of going out and doing a home visit and or interviewing others over the phone. So we will be discussing those on the on-site. Some of you are in different positions, and it might be more difficult to do that with a job seeker. So if you can pair up with somebody who is working with a job seeker to do that, or if you can't do that, maybe if you could try to do the same sort of thing to get information from somebody you know. Like, for instance, maybe you could talk to your grandmother and use some smooth listening to try to kind of pull out that sort of information from them. We can just talk about how that works and feels. A couple other announcements. I did put for the on-site training in June, I put the PowerPoint in the folder so you have access to the PowerPoint. And we have a reading assignment for webinar 5 called The Essential Elements of Customized Employment. And I was thinking it might be nice if people could read that out of the on-site training. So I went ahead and put that in the materials for the on-site as well. Just to say, I know we've been, time has been limited through the webinar, so know that on the on-site we'll have a little more time for questions, discussion, application, and I think it should be a really fun day, so I'm looking forward to it. And number 2, that webinar 5 is going to be after the on-site, so wrap up with a webinar after that. So today, then, webinar 4, we want to do, webinar 1, we talked about an overview of customized employment. In webinars 2 and 3, we went through the discovery process. Today, what I'd like to do is kind of take that from, how we get from discovery and use that information to customize a job for someone. Okay, that you will be able to discuss strategies for getting at employer needs, be able to draft an employment proposal that focuses on benefits to the employer, and use some interest-based negotiation techniques to get at that win-win agreement that we're trying to get at with customized employment. So start with getting employer needs. And we talked a little bit about this last time as we were starting in discovery. But as we get into the job development phase, we're going to continue to use informational interviews to get at employer needs. We're also going to look at leveraging social capital, or the social connections that people have, to use that to sort of get in the door for informational interviews or other discussions with employers. And the other thing we need to think about when we're gathering at employer needs is really keep in mind all possible customized employment outcomes. So we need to remember that there's things like resource ownership, maybe even micro enterprise. Maybe the need that's arising isn't a need from a particular business, but maybe from the industry or from the community. Sometimes self-employment roles will pop up there. As we move from discovery into formal job development, sometimes it seems a little gray because during discovery or discovering personal genius, we're analyzing vocational themes, we're doing some informational interviews, we might even as part of discovery be doing some short work trials, and so we might even get some unsolicited job offers. And that's kind of, sort of like with Wayne, the discovery profile he had you look at, he got a job offer while he was still in discovery. And so we need to think about, hey, where does discovery end and where does formal job development begin? Really, we say discovery ends when able to identify the 3 themes, summarize those ideal conditions of employment, and you've probably held a meeting to review with the team the results of discovery and to develop that career plan. And that launches you into formal job development. But know that it might seem a little bit gray in there at times. Maybe if you're getting unsolicited job offers while you're still in discovery, you may have to really think, like, is this the right fit? It's so easy for us to, want to pounce on a job because, like I said, a lot of pressure on employment specialists. Everybody wanted a job yesterday. But sometimes you have to really think through, is that a good fit for the person? And maybe the answer to the employer is, we're still in the discovery phase, still figuring out a good fit for this person, but we'll get back to you, something like that. So we talked last time about kind of 3 different kinds of questions we ask during discovery, during informational interviews, which got opening questions deal with advice, but all questions that deal with needs. In discovery phase, you're really more focused on advice, getting information and advice from the employer. In the search phase, it shifts a little to really, you get it all 3 with both sides, but in this phase, you're really a little more attentive to needs, because now you really are looking for work in the particular industry. And the reason you scheduled that particular informational interview is because it meets with the vocational themes of that individual. So remember, some of the questions to get at needs were things like, how has technology changed your business? Trends in your field? Is there anything that doesn't get done around here? What would you have somebody do if you had extra help, particular hours a week? Think that. Don't think of this as an all-inclusive list. There might be lots of different ways to get needs. You ask, are there times of day that are particularly busy? What could help that? There may be lots of different ways to ask these questions. In the additional materials folder, I put a new article that's out about informational interviews. So if that's something you're interested in, you might take a look there as well. During informational interviews, you're not really sitting down and talking to the employer. You might also want to schedule a tour at the end, because sometimes it's not what they tell you, but what you observe. You might see something that's not getting done, even though the employer doesn't tell you that. Or notice people that doing certain tasks that they're probably overpaid to do. They're paid to be there for particular skills that they have. Just get some extra duties because nobody else is around to do them. Might be bottlenecks where production is kind of slowing things down. Might be particularly busy times of day where people need extra help, or that require more than one person. Sometimes a mechanic might need somebody to help hold something while they, when they do the work that they do. It's not all the time, but sometimes it's helpful to have that extra body there. So these are the kinds of things you might be trying to observe while you're doing the informational interviews. Here's Patty, and Patty was somebody that we learned through discovery. And what she needed from a job was a really stable, consistent kind of job. That was just Patty's personality. She likes to know that she can do her job well, and she wants to know that she knows the task. She's fairly timid about learning new things. And Patty's somebody who would say is not fast. I wouldn't say she's terribly, terribly slow, but she certainly works at a pace, and she's very neat and organized. So as I went out and started doing informational interviews with Patty during the job search phase, we ended up at the CPA's office. And one we talked to the CPA, and she really didn't give us a lot of information about needs. She wasn't able to identify needs that she had herself. But the developer that I was with noticed up above her head were some shoe boxes. And she asked her about, what are in those shoe boxes? And the accountant said, well, those are full of receipts. People bring me in receipts, and, they're just unorganized. And it kind of like dawned on her, like, wow, that is a need that she had. Like, it would be really nice if somebody else organized those receipts rather than taking her time to do that. what we did as partly at first a discovery activity was help Patty practice to see if she could do that, to see if she could identify the dates and the total amounts and things like that, which she could. She could take the receipts, she could circle them, she could organize them by date. We had taught her early on about her interest in working with computers, and she was really very timid about computers. But when we pulled out a laptop and set up a little simple spreadsheet and showed her how you might enter that information, she did really well. So we proposed to the employer that hire Patty to do this particular task. But then we ended up negotiating several more tasks into that too, like doing bank runs and mail runs and some other tasks. But just missing the shoe boxes that took us down that road. Is another Joe was somebody who had a culinary theme. He enjoyed food. He was also very organized. And it took us to a tofu factory, exploring that in terms of the kind of work that was to be done. And as we were interviewing the owner, she asked us, do you mind if I multitask while we're talking? You could tell she was a busy woman. And so as we're doing the interview, we noticed she's shredding paper. Thinking, Joe could do that. And looking out the window and seeing cardboard boxes that are stacked up by the dumpster that needed to be broken down. And I'm thinking, Joe could do that. And then she took us on a tour of the factory, and they're hand labeling tofu containers. They were kind of like cottage cheese containers that had to hand label them with stickers. And, Joe could do that. Now she have identified that particular task, the labeling the containers. But some of the other tasks she probably wouldn't have told us about. The more that you can observe and kind of help people see the kinds of things that could be helpful, that might be beneficial to them. Because think of customized employment as an economic development kind of strategy. We really do want it to be a win. We want it to help the job seeker, but we also really want it to benefit the employer. Just one more example, and I think I told you about her last time, is in the assisted living place, where the employees, when asked, if you had somebody an extra 10 hours a day, what would you have them do? They went, oh, yeah, we were just talking about that. It'd be great to have somebody here from 4 to 6 every day. But we saw in the background were gift baskets, and the particular person had an interest in gift baskets. So not only could we kind of capture what she was telling us, having somebody there to assist from 4 to 6 every day when people are coming back from activities and it's just kind of busy getting ready for dinner, but seeing the gift baskets and saying, oh, maybe we can pair some things together. So continued use of informational interviews is just really helpful in the job development stage. The thing we really want to focus on is leveraging social capital. So think of social capital as the goodwill or reciprocity, the give and take inherent in relationships. So who we know and sharing of interest and values and neighborhoods are kind of at the heart of social capital. It all underlines networking with that purposeful connection for mutual gain. And what we find is that in customized employment, when we're trying to schedule informational interviews or get in to learn about employer needs, that's really, really helpful to warm up that contact by saying, so-and-so told me to contact you. Neighbor John recommended I contact you. Or one of your employees, Sally, thought that we should talk, or whatever it is. If you can name drop a little and help somebody see that it's not just you coming, but somebody recommended that you call. It's a lot harder for people to say no if there's somebody that they're no attached to that, right? So that to warm up for informational interviews is really important. There's a book called Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam that suggests from diverse surveys that at least a half of all people get their jobs from a friend or relative. So think about that. It's just a pretty typical strategy. It really is about, who you know. There's also an Atlanta study that found that each employed person in one social network increased one's annual income by $1,400. Now think about that. If every employed person I know increases my income by $1,400, I want to know some working people, right? That's really helpful. But think about a lot of folks with disabilities who aren't working. They tend to be poor. If they're living off SSI or maybe a smaller amount of SSDI, that's not a lot to live on. So they tend to be poor. They lack mobility due to limited transportation options, or maybe limited mobility skills, or maybe limited money for to expand those options. So makers really need exposure. They need to get out there. They need to get connected with people, because the more connections they have, the more people who can help with job search. And employment specialists, too. Think about it. Oftentimes, our programs are very isolated from the business community. And even if we are connected, we tend to be seen as charitable, like that we're looking for something. We're looking for donations. We're looking for somebody for business to help our agencies. So we got some work to do, too. So think about an employment specialist might have little resources to develop those personal and professional resources. As memberships in civic clubs, or think about it, how many of us have budgets to take employers out to lunch or do things like that are pretty typical in the business world, but maybe not so typical in the social service world. Sometimes just thinking through who people know is really helpful. Like if I say, okay, this is John. Who does John know? Who are his family? What are the formal or informal groups that he belongs to? Who are his friends? He spend time in the community. I mean, maybe it's the corner alley where he stops for coffee every day and has gotten to know the people there. So just kind of mapping out who people know sometimes can be very helpful, or who the family knows too. The part there is that we want to consider all customized employment outcomes. So remember, it's not just the negotiated jobs, but that resource ownership, micro-enterprise, business within a business. Because sometimes the need that comes up isn't with that employer's business. It's kind of a bigger need. Maybe the employer says, customers are always asking us for pressure washing services, and don't really do that. We offer lawn services, but we don't really offer pressure washing. It might take you on a different road. If that fits somebody's skills and interests, like, if that need in our community, what about helping John start a small business offering some pressure washing to help people clean up their patios or rinse their houses off before painting, or whatever that might be. So I think sometimes when people get stuck back in thinking about all of these potential outcomes really helps. I'll tell you, just recently I was doing a training, a 5-day training that was split 3 days, 2 days. And so in the first 3 days, we kind of covered discovery and sent people out. And there was a woman who was brand new. She just started a couple weeks ago at this agency in Los Angeles. And her name's Cassandra. And she's from a completely different field. And she'd been working for about 2 weeks, and she was feeling really stuck. It's like, wow, this is harder than I thought. So we spent some time talking about discovery. And when she came back a couple of weeks later, her report was so interesting. She said that question about what to do with $10,000. That question to the employer, it was trying to get at needs. What would you do with $10,000? She said that just turned everybody around. All of a sudden, they're excited to talk to me. They wanted to share all their ideas with me, and it was just super. She actually gone to one job seeker's house that was the week before we met again, and he wasn't there. And she says, "Mom, well, where is he?" He said, "At the beach, at the recreation center down at the beach. That's where he always hangs out." So she's been thinking, oh, gee, how am I going to get this guy to stop dressing like a beach bum and dress up so we can go to an interview? So instead, now she's kind of flipped perspective. She goes down to the beach recreation site and starts talking to the guy in charge down there. And when she talked to him about needs, one of the things he said is, he said, we have ping pong inside, but if we put these ping pong tables outside on the beach where people would see it, I think we'd get a lot more customers. And couldn't, because the city owned the ping pong tables and there was some rule that they couldn't put them out on the beach. But, we started looking at, could this be some kind of business within a business idea, where if this particular fella could buy the ping pong tables and have his own ping pong tables, it could be a resource ownership arrangement if they're paying him a wage, but it'd also be like a business within a business. And then she said at the end of that, she says, what Discovery's taught me is go where they go. She kept looking for jobs at places that he would never go. He goes to the beach. He likes the beach. Let's go there and look for employment. Keep all of those in mind. We've got a polling question coming up. Get at employer needs through informational interviews. And it says, check all that apply. I'll give you a hint. There's 2. So questions are asking about tasks that don't get done, fill an application, how they might use an additional staff person if they had one available, or writing a resume. We're looking for 2 responses there. I'm going to keep talking while you're filling it out. Moving into the next section, which is on employment proposals. And an employment proposal is used when you've done informational interviews and you've found some need that really fits what the job seeker is bringing. It fits their skills, it fits their interests, it fits their contributions. So an employment proposal is a way to highlight to an employer what you're proposing and tell them how it benefits them and why this is a good fit, why this is a win-win kind of situation. Typically, I will propose employment verbally first, but have it in writing as well, so I can review that written proposal with them. It leaves them something that they can go over with other people. So, because even in a very small business, if you talk to one person, there might be somebody else that they have to review it with, a partner, a spouse, somebody. So putting writing is helpful for that. Looking at the polling question answers, and yes, you've got it. Asking about tasks that need to be completed and asking about what they might do with additional staff person, okay? So we're getting away from sort of traditional strategies of filling out applications and leaving resumes, and instead really focusing on employer needs. Awesome, guys. Okay, an employment proposal outline. This is just the outline I use, kind of, is that this is the position I'm proposing. This is how it benefits you, because we really want to focus on that piece, how it benefits the employer. Also, just a little bit about the potential employee, and this is where I might get into why I'm coming to them, because it really does fit what this person has to offer. So again, it's kind of focusing on that win-win, how they can help you. The conditions, which might be things like accommodations or trainees or number of hours or anything like that, and any proposed financial arrangements. The cool thing about proposing employment, especially if it's a newly created job, is that there might not be a salary attached to it or an hourly wage attached to it. So you can propose whatever you want. And just next steps. And whenever I do an employment proposal, I always write like draft for discussion purposes all over it. So it's very clear that I'm just putting this in writing so that we have something to look at together, but that it's certainly negotiable. here's a bit about Shane. Last time we talked, in that guy that people initially described as non-compliant and had poor hygiene, and he would take direction from others. And we flipped that around and said, well, gee, really his ideal conditions of employment are that a situation where he can work more independently, that he has a flexible schedule, no need for excessive direction, and then it's outside and active, which kind of helps deal with the hygiene issue a bit. So as we were with the job development with Shane, I started thinking, wow, this is screaming self-employment to me. And I thought, wow, if we could help him sort of formalize his relationship with the Dairy Queen, where he was already picking up the parking lot, and get them to pay him, and maybe find a couple other places that would pay him, that would be the ideal job for Shane. But in the middle of that, he moved to a very small community. And I started thinking, well, okay, we could look at the same sort of thing in that community, but there were very, very few parking lots of any size. And I was just having trouble, finding this sort of that I could in his old community. So I started looking. There were places that needed picking up, like the city park, this place that needed litter picked up. There was a boat ramp because the town on a river, also a small sports field, a diamond that needed cleaning up. So I went and talked to the guy that ran the maintenance department for the city and kind of explained to him what I was looking for, that I was looking for sort of an on-call position to help with picking up the city park and the boat ramp and the sports park. The guy told me is, we have crews that do that. We have youth crews and we have crews from the corrections. And he said, if you can put him on one of those crews, I'd be happy to have him on one of those crews. And when I think about crew and changing conditions of employment, in crews, you don't work independently, you work with other people. There's probably not a flexible schedule. It's probably pretty set. There's no supervision at all times. The only thing that really met was that it was still outside and active. I knew this crew idea was not going to work for Shane. Back to the drawing board and talked to, and looked at some other places. But in my search, one place I stopped at was the post office. It had a fairly small parking lot that looked pretty clean, so that didn't seem to offer much promise. But what I noticed is that in the window of the post office was a copy of the city's mission statement. And one of the goals on the statement was something like, our goal is to involve youth in helping to maintain our city, or something to that effect. And I thought, wow, I had known that when I was talking to the guy initially. That night, I went home and I read in the paper that the man that ran the city maintenance department that I had talked to had gone to prison for parole violation. So I'm thinking, wow, I've got new ammunition, and I know I've got somebody new to negotiate with. So I went back and I talked to the person who had now taken over as the maintenance head, and I talked to him about hiring Shane. Well, initially he said, "Oh, you mean that new kid in town?" And I thought, "Oh dear, he's already done something to, give himself a reputation." But he said, the other day that somebody had vandalized the park and that there was litter all over. And I was busy and I didn't really pay any attention to him. He said, sure enough, as I was driving home that night, the park, I had to spend an hour and a half picking it up. An hour and a half, super pay, overtime. Ching, ching, ching. This is a sudden, looking like I need. So I went back to him again and proposed this. Oops, flip to the slide here. the purpose said something like this. Now, the other thing that I read in the mission statement is that they described residents of the city as independent spirits. So in the proposal is like Shane is an independent spirit, which really describes him very well, who is very interested in environment and maintaining his community. And proposing is an on-call assistance to provide help clean up the city park, boat ramp, and sports park. And the benefits to you are it provides additional help at peak times and seasons, so it's efficient. It's paying overtime, so it's money, and we just had a very nice example of that to throw in. And it's consistent with the city mission. So being able to identify their needs, see matches what Shane can offer, and then propose it in a way that helps them understand how it benefits them is really what we're getting at here. We ended up hiring him to do on-call work. We had to get it through the city council. It took a little ding. It was really cool, and what we found is that when we got his safety vest to wear, which the city provided, and this guy, Alan, who was his supervisor, when he called him to come, to say, hey, we need some help, he didn't say no to Alan. He did what he did, whereas with teachers, he was always telling them no, or with anybody else for that matter. Jennifer, and I'm going to skip over this one because I'm going to bring you a copy of her proposal when we meet in June. Go on to polling question number 2. That is, what do you want to stress in an employment proposal? Is it the applicant's experience, the benefits to the employer, credits and other employer incentives, the availability of job coaching? So to pick one there, I'm going to go on. What I wanted to cover with you is just a little bit on interest-based negotiation, because as we talk to employers and as we propose employment, you might get some kickback. People might object to certain things. People might have concerns about certain things. So how do you kind of negotiate that out? Remembering that what we want is a win-win agreement. It's not like we want to win and they lose, because that never works. That won't keep people there. So what interest-based negotiation is a set of tools that really attempts to improve the quality and likelihood of a negotiated agreement, right? By taking advantage of the fact that different parties often value various outcomes differently. So you need to kind of think about what they value and what's in it for them is really the thing. So often, too, with this kind of negotiations require a higher degree of trust, and that says something about how we build relationships. We may not want to do this kind of negotiation the first time we meet an employer. You're really there initially to just learn about their needs. So we take 2 or 3 meetings before we really even feel comfortable proposing employment. See it, the folks here? Yeah, and the majority of you got that right. It's the benefits to the employer that we're really trying to stress in a proposal. We want to make sure that they know it's a good fit for the individual, but we want to stress the benefits for them. Good job. So one of the tools that we're going to look at in interest-based negotiation is something we call right hand, left hand. Other one is something we call feel, felt, found, and another one is called reframing. So start with right hand, left hand, which is pretty simple. It's just like 2 columns. If you think left column, right column. So left column is something. It helps you really anticipate concerns and objections that employers might have. So in the left-hand column, you might put in key phrases of sort of the upcoming job development discussion, things that you're going to be talking about, sort of the key issues in your proposal. And the right-hand, figure out some possible objections that employers might have. So it's helping you anticipate and kind of construct a script beforehand so that you can be prepared to address employers' concerns. Some examples. They're concerned about the proposal they're going to provide, and they're concerned about the management accepting modification to the job description. And so I'm thinking ahead about what might be their concerns, and that might be one of them. And there might be another concern about modification that we're proposing that is to bring a work table that adjusts to different heights, right? So I know those are concerns I'm likely to get. Let me think about some responses. Well, gee, if they're concerned about modifications to job descriptions, maybe I'd be ready to provide some examples of other carved jobs to show the boss, or at least be able to offer that. I could offer to sketch out a revised job description for people to look at. So it's minimal cost on them, but I'm providing more information. So you're really wanting to use their concerns as an opportunity to provide more information. So with the concern about modifying the work table, maybe really what their concern is who's going to pay for it. So being ready to talk about, maybe some additional resources to help pay for the table, or you might be concerned about, what it's going to be, that can other people use it. So just be ready to talk through some of that. With Shane, your poll question first, okay. In this example, what objections might arise? That the city isn't currently hiring, that he has never hired on-call workers previously, that concerns about safety, or concerns about pay and benefits. So what might have been from the city, and when the proposal I'm submitting is to say, would you hire Shane to be a call worker to come in and clean up your parks and sports park and boat ramp, and so go ahead and fill that out. I'm going to come here. I'm not going to hear three of them. I'm going to take one of those. The city has never hired on-call workers before. And, I'm proposing this. I don't know that they have any on-call workers from my interview with the initial maintenance person. He didn't say anything about on-call workers other than the crews that were coming in, that some might have been, more summer-based. So I think that's one that's going to be an issue. And most of you put all of the above. I would say yes, that all of those could come up for sure. All of those that could come up. The one I just did the example of, and that I thought might be the first one to come up, but all of them could come up. So if I know that might be a concern, it can kind of help me prep some solutions in my head. Like this, to just kind of identify that it might be a really creative strategy to help needs and reduce cost, or that to be able to help them understand that this provides a way for them to be more efficient. As given the example of the supervisor having to stay an hour and a half at overtime at supervisor's pay, that can help save money too. Can also be ready to help support the manager, in this case is who I was talking to. He has to take it to somebody else. He's really not the decision maker. So I would offer to come and help present the proposal to the city council for approval, which we ended up doing. I didn't do it. A coworker of mine ended up doing it. Or maybe provide examples of other government agencies who have created positions like that, if you know of some. I didn't necessarily. But those are all possible solutions to that objection that I might have proposed. Again, really anticipating objections and being ready to come back with some solutions or some positive responses or more information. Concerns often about people need more information. A tool is called Field Felt Found. In this tool, you do is you acknowledge employer's viewpoint. You know, you want to acknowledge how they feel, and then offer that you and or others might have felt the same way. That is, until you found information that relieves the concern in some way. So here's an example of how that might look. So we're proposing a job for Jeffrey, and the concern is about safety, which, I mean, this is a pretty typical, right? Safety. So I might say something to the employer like, oh, you know, I understand how you feel. None would want harm to come to anyone, and we would not recommend Jeffrey for the job if we felt there were major safety concerns. So when I started working with companies on resolving their recruitment and training problems, I felt these concerns needed investigation and serious consideration. What our many customers found is that insurance premiums did not increase. In fact, safety records for people with disabilities, according to several studies conducted by companies such as the DuPont Corporation, are actually as good or better than those for people without disabilities. So again, it's kind of saying, I understand how you feel, I know, and I felt that way too, but what we found is that that's not really true. You know, so it's a really soft way of helping relate to people, but then also giving them information that they need. A tool for based negotiation is reframing. That's really just taking problems that people identify and trying to turn them into solutions, or trying to uncover other options, or change the way we look at a problem. So, for example, if a coworker complains that an employee is not fast enough and the team is not meeting production targets, that's a problem, right? But if we kind of reframe it by maybe suggesting more effective training techniques, or asking the employee or the team with assistance in diagnosing the problem, or finding an adaptation, or researching the cost of automated equipment to improve production, you know. So we're taking the problem and just trying to flip it into more of a solution-finding phase. Skip that one. Short video I wanted to show you. Well, let's just pause for some questions here for a minute. Go ahead, and if you can just put them in the box. Let's see, I need to go to the chat. No. Q&A. Here we go. Okay, so let me see here. Heike, maybe help me. Should it be in Q&A or chat? Not seeing any questions.
I didn't have any questions when it came in, Janet. I will also look and check and see if I can find that link to the video that you mentioned.
Okay, can we pull it up?
We can try.
Hold it for just a second. It's a very short video, but I think it's pretty cool. I see a question here. In our small community, we're having trouble even getting the door to speak with the company. Any suggestions? Yeah, I hear that a lot from people. What I think about is the size of the company, and it can happen with different size companies for sure. But sometimes I find larger companies don't want to people or who they talk to is the HR person, and the HR person is kind of the person who screens you out. Using social capital, if you have somebody that knows the owner, and sometimes you might have to, cultivate that a little bit. Maybe you don't know anybody, but you have to work at it a little bit, really bringing the whole team in and anybody know somebody in here that can help us make a connection? Sometimes I've done things like to people at the Small Business Administration or the Small Business Development Center, and sometimes they can give you referrals, sometimes they can't. I mean, they have certain rules that they have too. So anybody that might be able to help you kind of warm up that contact. Kind of strategies you might use in communities are maybe the heads of that company connected in any service groups. I mean, that might be a way of connection too, like through the chamber or through the Lions Club or through the Elks or things like that, where you might have a way of connecting with them. Again, even things like maybe offering to take them to lunch or something like that, that's something a little bit not as typical as what we often do. So think about things like that, if that's possible, if that can help in any way. Okay, see if there's other questions. But gets half the battle, I hear you. So, oops. That's right here.
Janet, can the presenter privileges back so I can try to share my screen in just a moment.
Okay. What we're going to show you is it's a quick video. It's called How to Learn Negotiation in 1 minute. And, as we think of it, sometimes as we're going into negotiations with people, like I said, interest-based negotiation is really about understanding their position too. And sometimes we don't understand their position, or what we think is their position is not really their position. So this is analysis of negotiation. It comes from a film. I can't remember. It'll tell you in the beginning what the title of the film is. But in this case, he's negotiating with this young woman about doing a little acting job that's going to help him get in good with his girlfriend, right? So, okay, take it away, Heike. At the beginning. Back from the beginning and raise the volume.
Well, I can't tell you why I don't have sound on that.
I'm just saying, tell them it's not in the cards right now. I thought you'd be excited to have an acting job.
If it's an acting job, we should get paid.
Yeah, you're gonna get paid in experience.
I want to actually get paid.
All right, what?
$6 for the day, plus overtime if we go over 8 hours. I'll do my hair and makeup, and I want you to pay for the 6 week intensive acting camp that my mom can't afford.
$3 for the day and a 2-week acting class at the YMCA nearest you.
$500 and a 4-week acting class.
$300 and a 3-week class.
Done.
I would have done it for $500.
I would have done the experience.
The truth not in the cards right now. I thought you'd be excited to have an acting job.
If it's an she get paid.
Yeah, you're gonna get paid in experience.
Actually get paid.
All right, what do you want?
$600 for the day, plus overtime if we go over 8 hours. I'll do my hair and makeup, and I want you to pay for the 6 week intensive acting camp that my mom can't afford.
$3 for the day and a 2-week acting class at the YMCA nearest
Done. I would have done the experience.
Okay, thank you, Heike. It's just a great example is that sometimes we don't understand what's really important to the other side. Like Danny there thought that what was important to her was the experience, which obviously the experience was important to her, but also wanted to get paid, right? So kind of teasing that out, sometimes helping to get to know what's really is important to people and using that to help negotiate a good agreement. What they said at the end about BATNA, best alternative to negotiated agreement, that has to do with just kind of understanding where people's bottom lines are. You know, sometimes there's other factors come in, like for instance, if you say you're in a car and you've got an offer for $6,000 for this car you're selling, and then you think, well, the least you would take for it, but what if your mother said that she'd buy it for $550? Mother, it's like, would you sell it to your mother, or would you sell it to the dealership for $6,000? Or what if somebody said they'll give you $6,000, but you have to wait 2 months to get the $6,000, and somebody else might give you less, but you get it all sooner. There might be other things that kind of affect your perspective on that. So I hope that was kind of fun. And just in summary, they just say that as we go into job creation, that first of all, we've really got to understand the job seeker's ideal conditions of employment so that we do make good fits, and we can, be confident in expressing to an employer how they might help them. And then really understanding those employer needs through continued use of informational interviews, through social capital, and really considering, again, all potential customized employment outcomes. And we need to actively propose employment. So, that's something a little different for most of us. We're waiting for employers to put out positions where they're asking for people to come in, inviting people to come and apply. This is different in that we're not waiting for a position to be open. We're actively proposing employment prior to identifying some needs, because once they identify needs and put it out there, then there's a bunch of competition, and that's what we're trying to get around. We propose employment we use interest-based negotiation techniques to really anticipate objections and use it as an opportunity to provide additional information as we go. So take a look in the Q&A again and see if there's any last questions. And remember that we'll be meeting in June 5th through 7th. Checking the chat and Q&A. And I'm not seeing any questions. If anybody, let me know. Here, okay. So any last announcements, Heida, on your end?
Just a reminder that there will be the survey. We do appreciate everyone filling that out. And next session will be the on-site. The following webinar then will be on June 22nd.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay, very much, everybody. I look forward to meeting you in June. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend.